Caleb's story, Chapter 3. The wind howled all afternoon, and when I looked out the window, I couldn't see the barn. Cassie drew pictures by the wood stove, and Sarah read, stopping every once in a while to add vegetables to the soup. No sign of John. Should I go upstairs and check on him? I asked Sarah. No, Caleb, let him be. You could feed the animals, though. I put on my coat and gloves. Remember the rope, Caleb, said Sarah, peering out the window. You can't see a foot in front of you. I'll remember. And your hat, Caleb. Sarah! Sarah laughed and opened the door for me, and I went out into the wind and snow. There were already drifts, and I took hold of the rope, following it all the way across the yard, stumbling in the snow. The noise of the wind was so loud that I was surprised by the quiet of the barn when I stepped inside. I stood in the middle of the barn and looked all around. Papa had once said that the barn in winter was the most peaceful place he knew. It is a small, peaceful place in the middle of a big land, he had told me. It was true. No voices, only the animals, their breath and bodies so warm. I fed John's horse last, stroking his nose. Where did you come from? He stared at me, his eyes dark. And who is he? There was only silence in the barn. Papa was right. Another excerpt from Caleb's journal. The barn, so small in a big place. Peace. Continuing with Chapter 3. John is awake, announced Cassie when I returned to the house. I can see. John sat at the table drinking tea. Seal sat at his feet. Min was now sleeping in Seal's basket. You look better, said Sarah. I am better, said John. Cassie studied John closely. Finally, he put down his cup of tea. What? He said gruffly. Are you a robber? Asked Cassie. Cassie, warned Sarah. No, said John, I am not a robber. Sarah carried an armful of laundry upstairs. I opened my book. I'm writing about you, I told John. John frowned. There is nothing to write about me, he said. Oh, but I have already written some things. I pushed the book over for him to read. John's lips were set in a thin line. He didn't even look at my book. He turned to Cassie, who had been staring at him all this time. Doesn't she do anything, he asked me. I smiled. She's little. She doesn't do much. She draws. She plays hide and seek. Hide and seek? Good idea. Go hide, he said to Cassie. Cassie waited. You have to count, I said. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slower, I told him. John sighed. 5, 6. Cassie ran off. John leaned back, looking pleased. There, he said, she's gone. He lifted his cup of tea. Ready, called Cassie from somewhere in the house. Now you have to go find her, I said. You go find her. I'm coming, I called. Not you, came Cassie's voice. Him. John stared at his teacup. Then, muttering under his breath, he got up and left the room. I'm coming, he called. I'm coming, he repeated softly. I looked at my open book. I wrote. Another excerpt from Caleb's journal. He didn't even look at it. Why wouldn't he look at what I wrote? Maybe he's afraid. But what is he afraid of? Continuing with Chapter 3. We ate with the oil lamp throwing light across the table. Grace, Cassie, said Sarah. John stopped, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Cassie waited for him to put it down. God is great, God is good, and we thank him for our food, said Cassie. Food, corrected Sarah. Food, repeated Cassie. John ate quietly, not looking at anyone, especially Cassie. Another excerpt from Caleb's journal. John didn't look at Cassie as if he knew what I knew. When you look at Cassie, she asks a question. Always. This didn't work for John. Continuing with chapter 3. Do you have children? Asked Cassie. Don't pry, Cassie, said Sarah. What does pry mean? Asked Cassie. It means not poking into the life of someone who doesn't want it, said John briskly. But I want to know, said Cassie matter-of-factly. What I want is for you to eat your dinner, said Sarah sternly. I smiled. Cassie makes me think of you, Sarah. When you first came here, you asked lots of questions. Sarah smiled too. I did, didn't I? And your father grew very tired of it. I came here from Maine, she told John. After Jacob's wife died, Jacob wrote an advertisement in the newspaper for a wife. I read it. I came. And she stayed, I told John. Anna and I were afraid she wouldn't. She missed the sea, but she stayed. That was a brave thing to do, said John. I thought so too, said Sarah. It seems a long time ago now. She brought seal, said Cassie. Now I'm here. I'll say, said John. Sarah got up and went to the window. I'm sure Jacob won't be home tonight. He'll stay in town. You can talk to him tomorrow, John. John didn't answer. He took a medicine bottle out of his pocket when Sarah wasn't looking and took a pill. When he saw me watching, he quickly put the bottle back in his pocket. There was no more talk, no more questions. Another excerpt from Caleb's journal. The wind howls outside, the snow and sleet hitting the windows like stones tossed there. Inside it is peaceful, but John doesn't look peaceful at all. He looks like he has secrets. I will find out what they are.